profile demographics, payroll, including W-2s online, any kind of request from the employee, the training functionality, benefit enrollment, recruiting from an internal standpoint / employees versus an external applicant. We'll talk about former employee access. That's a pretty exciting part of this also. And we're going to talk about what's coming and what's in the pipeline and talk about how you can be part of this opportunity. So the authentication, for anyone that's familiar with our previous product, you authenticated separately. So with this product, you actually authenticate with your Meditech or your AD credentials. So there's no separate domain to authenticate to. How it works is that the MIS user is attached in the work tab of the employee file. So that's what connects the sign-on person to their actual employee information. We also have optional two-factor authentication. And two-factor authentication, I'm sure you're mostly all familiar with this, is when you're sent another code to authenticate. It's just an additional security factor. And how that works with that is optional to turn it on. And how it works is it sends that code to the home email that is in the employee file. So obviously the home email would be required in the employee file in order to have that in place. It's easier for employees with this authentication model because they do not need to remember additional passwords and usernames. However, former employees and applicants, because they will not be as users in your network anymore, they authenticate differently with what's called AAA authentication. This authentication model process is the exact same as your patients would use for Patient Portal or PHM. One of the really exciting parts of this is we have added a ton of branding opportunities, colors, logos, naming conventions, etc. So we want to kind of go over that, but you'll also see the same thread throughout our process here because it affects the whole part of the portal. So brand recognition has really become an important part of representing your company. We integrated new ways to get your message out to employees or prospective employees by integrating your colors and messages. Color combinations are easy to modify in a dictionary. Multiple logos are included, and we have primary logos, secondary logos, and also separate logos for payrolls. Separate images in recruiting is also available. Also, you can edit the names of buttons here, as well as remove buttons that you don't use. Down here, we have general announcements, we have contact us, additional resources, and terms and conditions. So those are different ways, again, that you can share information with your employees. General announcements are driven by dates, very easy to use, and we'll look at that a little more closely. The contact us, the employee would click on it and it would give information regarding how to contact, like the help desk or whatever. Additional resources, when that's clicked on, it will bring up a screen that will give additional options to be redirected to other sites. So frequently we see our hospitals putting things in either their hospital website or their health insurance carrier or the local news station or something like that. Terms and conditions, you can determine what you would like to see when that comes up, maybe some kind of verbiage regarding, the use of the portal. So up here, we also have, in addition to have a logo right here, this color scheme here, as well as the back of this right here, where it's generally white in this particular picture, those are all determined by the logos and the color. So for instance, if your colors were, like green and yellow or whatever, you could have that reflected right here as well as in here. Also, you can have color that, is not flat, so it moves down to a lighter color, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can have that opportunity to make it look like your portal. So additional ways that you can make it your own. We have on each of the screens, and you'll see this as we go along during the recruiting as well as the profile area, instructions on the screen. So instructions are information right on the screen telling the employee additional information or what they should do / expect. When an employee submits a change on the portal, they will get a message right that comes up on the screen. And again, we'll see more of this, but that submit message can confirm who to contact in case of any questions, what to expect, maybe a fax machine number or an office number or things like that, where they could go to fill out additional information or come for questions or anything like that. The submit email message, when the employee has submitted perhaps an address change, they will, in addition to getting a submit message on the screen at the time of submission, they will also get an email confirming that change. So again, you have the ability to update that text in the CanText dictionary. It's very easy. Also, we have standard body messages, and basically those are kind of like the blocks of messages that come up. And we'll see that again in recruiting and W-2s and things like that. Hover text is when the employee or anyone hovers over particular information, what information kind of displays as you're hovering. You can have multiple images, as I've referred to. You can have color branding. Also, we're really excited, and we'll look at that a little bit more, that we're going to have a mobile version also. That's completely in the works, and it should be done by the end of third quarter. So those instructions and things that I've referenced, you also have an additional set of things that you can use for the mobile version if it's different, that you'd like to, say something different. And again, like I said, the custom button names, which is really kind of a nice thing, because if, for instance, you don't call, let's see, payroll or something like that, or maybe you don't call profile, maybe you'd like to call it staff information, anything like that, you'll have the ability to rename these buttons to what is more appropriate for your situation. Okay, here's just some examples of like how it all pulls together based upon the landing page that I just showed you. So here's my additional resources and external links. So this is where I have the opportunity to say what the name is that shows up and then link it to the address. Here's the general announcements area, and as you can see, it's very easy to use. Basically, you put in the announcement text right here on this line and a start date and an end date. If you don't have an end date, then it will stay out there until you put an end date in. So I'm just going to go back one screen to just show you that. So here we're talking about the additional resources that once that's clicked, it will come up with that additional information that I just showed, or additional links, I should say. Okay, so here's an example of how the branding, colors, and images get created. So in the customer-defined parameters, which actually is housed in the human resources application, basically what you can see is here is the place where you can put in a hex HTML color reference. So if you have your top margin to be whatever, you can input that here and it will show you what it's going to look like over here. Unless these are changed, they will stay with the standard, which is the blues and things that we just saw. Here you can see a mobile part. So again, you can do different branding there, and that's for the colors. So the thing to do, your marketing department probably has color numbers or codes, and you can just Google it. We have connected here a couple of other different things here that you can research that to determine what your codes are, and then you can put them in here. It's very easy. On that same branding tab right here, we have, that was the colors, and also we have the images. The images basically all you're doing is selecting one of those, which opens a window onto a desktop that you can select the image. Here's the ability to customize the buttons that I just talked to you about very easily. Here's the homepage buttons, and basically you select it and tell it what you'd like to be called over here. I know this isn't a training session, but I feel like it's the reason why we come in here is to give you a better idea of what to expect, and if it's easy, if it's hard, do you get to do it, things like that. So that's why I'm just pointing it out. So this is our recruiting customer defined options, and as you can see, we can have a separate image here, we can have a default status, and we can have some information regarding what the external and internal statuses will show as. Up here, we have the applicant CD, include the applicant CD and what it should be called, and the default applicant status reason. Here we have the payroll options, and Brian will be going over this more specifically, but here we can select different images for each payroll. If you only have one payroll, then that's fine too. You can select an image here to attach to it. Here's a place where you can define the hover text. And also we have some really exciting things regarding updating direct deposit on the portal. So Brian will go over that more specifically, but this is where those options are. Benefit enrollment, we have the ability to, again, attach some external links. Now, I'm quickly going to go over this because I know I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but basically this is the content dictionary, and this is, it comes with the standard instructions, the submission text, etc. But this is where you can actually select which content you would like to change. And basically, it's a matter of, here's your standard content, and you can just enter in a canned text mnemonic right there, and it will pull that in instead of the standard text. As you can see up here, there's different buttons, and those buttons will be highlighted depending on what type of content you're looking at. So for instance, like the W-2 would just have the body, for instance. Same thing for a customer defined submit message and email submit message. Okay, so we're going to take a little break here for a second and see if there's any questions so far. So we've unmuted the phone. And Brian?
We did have, excuse me, a chat question. They asked, how would branding work if there are multiple organizations sharing a database? Would the branding be tailored for each? And my thought was, and I said I'd check.
Okay, if you guys, excuse me, if you guys are not asking questions, could you mute yourself? Okay, just 1 second here so we can possibly identify that person. What happened? What did you do? We're gonna stop. Okay, sorry, just give us a second here. Okay, since we were, you guys were unable to mute yourselves on your end, we have muted everyone so that everyone can hear the question. So we would direct you to mute yourself on your end. If you have a question, please let us know and we'll be happy to address it. But unless people mute themselves on their end, it does make it impossible for us to unmute everyone. So please just give us a chat. We can unmute you individually, or you can unmute yourself if you have a question. So, I'm sorry, Brian, what was the question we had?
The question was, how would the branding work if there are multiple organizations sharing a database? Could the branding be tailored for each? Now, when they say organization, I don't want to assume, but I'm assuming like different payrolls within one database. My response was, I believe this is database specific, the branding, and wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so there is primary and secondary. Right here on the screen is the secondary, and the primary, both of those are global for that particular database. However, like you said, payroll can be specific to that particular payroll. Now, you could have different URLs for those different databases, which would then allow you to have branding specific to that database.
Okay. I hope that helps.
Does anyone have any other questions? You can feel free to raise your hand or chat us.
Or unmute yourself.
Or unmute yourself. Okay, so we are going to switch places here, and Brian will be addressing profile for us, so just give us a second to switch it up.
Okay, so now, as Patty mentioned, I'm going to dig into the actual buttons within from the IAS home menu that we saw earlier. The first one being the profile button. This will allow employees to see what information is currently in their employee file. So on the left-hand side here, you can select one of these headers, and the information in that section will display. So if we go into the system here, go to my user profile page. So for example, if I click on one of these items on the left here, it'll show me more detailed information from the employee file, the information that corresponds with this heading. Now, one thing I want to point out is if you look under electronic forms, I've already consented to receive my W-2 form electronically, so you can see yes in this field. This is going to come into play when I go over electronic W-2s in a few minutes. Also, too, you may notice how come some of these headings, they have edits pending. That means that I have submitted edits in regards to this information over the portal. So to do that, you go over to the right-hand side here. You can choose to update some information if you wish. You can take any of these buttons to choose what information employees should actually be able to change or not. So you can remove some. When an employee submits the change on IAS, the request is then sent to HR to be processed, which then in turn updates the employee file. So let's take a look at select update my info in contacts. So within each button, you can create an entry in the dataset dictionary in HR to prevent specific fields from being edited. Fields that I am not able to edit are grayed out. So for example, in this case, you can see that the employee number and the birth date field I cannot edit. A future project for development will allow you to control which fields are actually required. So for example, you can make the address required before an employee can submit. So if we scroll down below we have an area we can put in contacts. Now it looks like you can only submit one, but it is an accordion type mechanism. So if you start putting in one, in tab, if I start entering this one in, you'll notice if I scroll down that you have a space for another one, and you can submit up to 3 of these at once for contacts. Now keep in mind any additional instructions you want to give employees, you can add to the top of the form here. And this goes for most pages on the IAS 2.0, which is nice. You can, like Patty was saying, you can really make it your own. Also, when you submit a change, you get a customizable pop-up message that could contain other information as well. So if I made a change, hit submit, it'll also tell you, which is nice, any required fields that I forgot to fill in. So in this case, I started putting in a contact and I didn't finish. So if we say OK, go down, since that was just for example purposes, I'm just going to remove that. And one other thing too, just as a side note, for any of you customers that previously used our MIG IAS, it is so nice having a submit button at the bottom here. Because if you recall any requests or anything that required submission, you had to scroll back up. So that's just a nice little feature there. So here, you can customize the submit request here to your liking. Okay. Now let's take a look at update direct deposit and tax information. Okay, so let's say, so we have our direct deposit information up here. Let's say I want to add a new account for direct deposit. So if I go to add account, this is just another example of how you can customize the message, because here I have a canned text that includes this picture for easier instructions for the employee. So I have to first choose a type, direct deposit or check. I will select a bank from the direct deposit bank dictionary in payroll. Find the account number, the account type, whether it is checking or savings. And I will say add. Okay, so we can see that this is the new account that I just added here. Now, of course, as you know, direct deposit accounts get funds deposited to them in the order that they appear in the employee file. So the order is important. So one of the nicer features is we have this drag and drop feature. So if you want this to actually be the third account before the balance, you can actually click on this, the left click, and drag it down. And then I can define the amount I want in there. And submit. And while doing that drag and drop that I just did, that will not cause a pre-notification either for the existing accounts for this employee. And it will respect your setting in the direct deposit bank dictionary, whether that bank requires a pre-note or not. So if they don't require a pre-note, you will not be pre-notified. Also, you have additional options to customize what options you have actually available to you. You can choose the distribution method. So employees would only be able to select dollar amount, for example, instead of both dollar or percentage. You can also disable the account type of check if you do not allow that at your facility. And you can remove the add account button so employees can only change the amounts that go into each account, and it will not have the ability to add a new one. So there are a lot of different options to customize this to meet your facility's needs. Okay, just some other, go over these. If you want to update licenses and skills, skills and licenses, you can do that as well. And this will send a request over to the HR application. If you want to take a look at requests that you've already submitted, this is a nice feature here. You can click on the submitted requests, and it'll show you all the different requests that you have submitted, the category, and the type. So we have multiple personnel requests, so this would be like things like demographics, and then we also have a payroll type, which would be like the direct deposit and tax. One thing to keep in mind too, whenever you see these two arrows, is how you can actually sort this data. This isn't just in here, but in other places on the portal as well, which is kind of neat. So you can sort by date, oldest to the most current, or vice versa. category, alphabetically, and by type as well. So it's a neat little trick. And then lastly, for updating changes, if by any chance you have applied for an internal position, if you had applied, you would see your application here. And like I said, well, like Patty said earlier, she's going to be going over the recruiting option in more detail a little later on. Okay, so we submitted our changes. So in HR, the web personnel and web payroll buttons in the roles desktop are used to process these requests. These buttons show in red with an asterisk when there's a request to be processed. This signals to HR users that they need to go in and actually have an action to take to process these requests. HR would then use the process button to review the request and decide whether or not to approve it or deny it. So when they go into that process, here's a screenshot of that. You can see the information currently in the employee file and the information being requested. If there are any differences, it shows in red as we see here. So you can see that this employee has changed 2 of their bank accounts. They changed the order and the amounts in these 2 accounts. If I review and the requested information is correct and save the information, this will then update the employee file. Development is planning to enhance this routine to allow you to edit the requests from the screen. So if you are processing the request and wanted to make an edit, you can do it here rather than having to go into the edit employee file routine and do it after it's processed. There will also be a parameter that can convert everything to capital letters if you choose. So what does that mean? So if an employee submits a change of address and they use mixed case or lowercase, there's a parameter to make it flow over to actual HR side in all uppercase. That's the strategy that your site is currently using. Okay, the next, so moving on from the profile button, we're going to go over to the payroll button. So this page will display payroll-related information for employees. So underneath the heading, you can customize the verbiage that appears, as we see here. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go to my home screen, click on payroll. Okay. So here we have the current pay section. This will display the most recent time card for this employee. So to see the detail, you can just click on the date. So here we have our pay advice. So this will display the actual details of the time card, including year-to-date amounts, current earnings, withholdings. If you scroll down, you kind of see the whole thing here. And also how it's distributed, how it's paid out via direct deposit. And then, of course, you have the option to return back to the previous page, or if you choose to do so, you can print it in a formatted fashion from this page as well. I'll say return. Oh, one thing I did want to note is from the home page, I know Patty mentioned my notifications. One of a nice little thing to reduce clicks is that the most recent pay advice will always appear under my notifications. So once you log in, you can literally just click on this, and that'll take you right to that pay advice. So that's kind of a nice little shortcut. So below the current, we have current available benefit hours will display for only the benefits that you specify. So this is a view-only feature and takes a live look at the available benefit balances from the employee's file. The historical pay data will display just that, historical pay advices for the employee in question. So to see specific time cards within a particular year, you can click on the year in question. So I'll click on 2016, for example. From there, you can click on the particular time card in question and see the detailed pay information in the same fashion that we just saw the current pay advice in. Okay. Next, we have the compensation statement. This is now displaying the current HR compensation statement. However, there are plans to enhance this feature moving forward, so stay tuned on that. Now, one of our most exciting enhancements by far is the electronic W-2s. This feature allows employees to view, download, or print their W-2s electronically. For our Canadian customers, we are planning to have T4s available on IAS for next tax year. T4s on IAS will work similar to the way W-2s work, so the general process I'm going to review will be the same. However, the format will be in the T4 format instead of the W-2. Okay, so it's important before employees can receive their W-2s or T4s electronically, they have to provide their consent. This is required by the IRS, but it is a one-time process, meaning if employees provide consent this year, they would not have to do it in future years. Employees provide their consent via the profile section of IAS initially. They would select this consent to receive electronic W-2s button down here. So that's why when I first went into go to home, to my profile, we didn't have that option to update. It's because I've already consented, and you can see that I've consented if we click on the electronic forms, receive W-2, electronic W-2, and it says yes. So once they select the consent, they are then presented with a pop-up message that you defined, and they can choose to accept or reject. If they accept, they can then view their W-2s on the payroll button. So if they do provide consent, the Receive Electronic W-2 field under the Tax and Direct Deposit tab of the employee file will be flagged as yes, as we're seeing here. This is automatically updated in the employee file once the employee provides consent on IAS. Now, to generate W-2s electronically, there is a new routine. So you would use the Generate Electronic W-2 routine to post W-2s for everyone on a payroll. You define the date you want the W-2s to post on IAS. The W-2s will only show for employees who have given their consent. However, if you run this routine now and then later an employee provides their consent, their W-2 would show immediately on IAS. So when running the original print W-2 forms routine, you can choose to exclude the printing of employees who have consented to receive their W-2s electronically. So that will definitely save you on paper forms. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So I'm in the payroll button, so I'm going to go click on W-2 forms. And when clicking on the W-2 forms button, you can customize this verbiage that we see at the top. Below that, you will see the W-2 forms by tax year that you can view or print. the W-2, the electronic W-2s here can go back to 2013. So you would select the tax year in question. You will then be launched directly to a screen that looks similar to like a PDF where employees can view their W-2. And then here they have the option to, open the file, they can print it, download it, make it larger, zoom in, do a search feature. And so if you scroll down, you can see what it looks like. It looks pretty neat. It even has the page or the back of the form with the instructions as well. Okay, so before moving forward, I want to stop and take a break to see if anyone has any questions regarding the profile or payroll buttons that we just went over on the portal. So feel free to chat them in or unmute yourselves and ask the question.
And Brian, the unmute button for anyone that wants to unmute themselves is at the bottom left-hand side of their screen.
Thank you.
We did get some good questions, though. One of them you did answer a little later on was regarding the Canadian T4s. Will they be available? And you, again, just to reiterate what Brian said, they will be available for the next tax season. Also, we are not demoing this in the Canadian format. However, the Canadian format is available, meaning like the dates and things are, correctly displayed according to your way that it should be displayed. So that's just important to know too. We had another question, which is a really good question regarding the direct deposit bank. So the question was that they have 7, Bank of America. How is the employee, can the employee see the bank mnemonic and name, or do they have to enter the transit number? So we do recognize that as kind of an issue. So what we're doing is development is currently working on that to display additional information than just the name of it. So when the employee does select that direct deposit, they'll have additional information which will indicate which one they want to pick. Someone had also asked how far back the pay advices go, and I believe they go back as much as you have information.
Got it.
I think they used to go back 3 years.
But now they go back as long
as there's Meditech information out there. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Yeah.
Okay, and then another good question, I'll leave that for you to answer. I already chatted the other ones. Someone had asked if we do implement, are we able to use some but not all of the features?
Absolutely. That's kind of one of the nicest things about the portal is if you just want to go up with, just the pay advice first, absolutely. It does not have to be an all or nothing implementation at all. You can do it in stages, do it with test groups first, and then roll it out to the rest of the employees. So absolutely.
And if you're not using, for instance, one of the buttons that we haven't got to yet or whatever, those can just be removed from the screen. And also just to add on to what Brian said earlier, use some or not all of the features. If we consider some of the data elements features, like Brian said, you can say this is required and this isn't. So that's another way to kind of make those choices yourself. We do have a question about whether this is an upgrade or for anyone that's using MIG already. This is not an upgrade. It is a complete replacement of the product. However, if you've already licensed it, there is no additional license fee. And we can talk about that more at the end. So another person did ask about whether we have a user guide to build this out, and that actually we do not right now. We have a lot of documentation available. However, this class was really not really designed to be a training because we do go over a lot of information. But once your implementation starts, there'll be additional training classes, and we'll work with you. And believe it or not, it's actually pretty easy. There's not a ton of stuff to do. except when you start using recruiting and benefit enrollment. Basically, it's determining your branding and what you want to see and what you want to use, which is not very difficult. So that's all the questions we have now.
No, that's good. That's a lot of good, great questions.
Yeah, really, that's good. Keep them coming, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question during it, and we will continue on.
Okay, so the next button we're going to be going over is the request. So we can see here from our home screen, we went over these two, and we're going to go over requests next. So an employee can submit a request for a badge, vacation, or leave of absence. Again, you can remove any of these buttons as well, just to kind of piggyback on what Patty was saying. So, so on this main screen here, I can see the different requests that I have submitted, the dates, and the statuses. Submitting one of these requests uses the buttons on the right, initiate tasks or LOA requests in HR. A badge request sends a task in HR to a specific user so they can reprint a badge. An LOA request can be sent to the supervisor chain and HR depending on the type of request. And then lastly, a vacation request is sent to the employee's supervisor to review. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to sort these, you can sort them anyway by submit date or anything, just by clicking on these little arrows to the left of the header. So just to kind of see an example of one, if you want to submit a vacation, you can come in here, you click on the binoculars for a calendar, put in the date, you choose end date. What's nice here is it defaults your position. This is your position from the employee file, and I obviously have a primary and then looks like to be a secondary. I'm well versed. I'm an accountant and also a registered nurse. So you can select under what position you're requesting the vacation, and that's important because with different positions, you have different hierarchy. So you want to make sure the request goes to the correct supervisor. So I'm going to skip over jobs for now because Patty's going to spend a little bit of time on that in a few. I'm going to go over to the training button next. Make sure I didn't miss anything on my presentation. Okay, good. So here, employees can review and sign up for trainings offered at your facility. The training is created in HR, and then employees could log on to the portal and then sign up. What's also nice is supervisors can have the ability to sign up their direct reports or staff as well. If it's a mandatory training and they want everyone to attend, they have that option. Also, the required flag will indicate any trainings that are required for the employee's position as defined in HR. So, upcoming training sessions that I am signed up for will show in this first section. These upcoming trainings also show in the My Notifications section on the homepage. So if we go back to the homepage real quick, under My Notifications, I already pointed out the latest pay advice, but also any future trainings that I have coming up will also display here. Also, too, you have a training history record. So this link right here, show training history. This will show trainings in a completed status that I have attended. So I gained the basic life support skill. If I gained any certified medical units or continuing education credits, and then the expiration date is listed as well. So available trainings for me to sign up for is down here. So let's see, let's pick one. Let's say staff development. So we have a couple, one in May and one in June. So if I just select one in May. So here you get some more information regarding the training being offered. You can see the details, the dates, the instructor, the class description, and agenda. And you can see, if I scroll down, any prerequisites, whether or not any other prior training is required. And you can also see the attendees. I myself, I am logged in under Robert Owen. I am already an attendee, so I don't have the option to add me, but I do have the option to remove me. And that would effectively remove me from the attendee section. But if I did decide, hey, I do want to go to that training, I could come back in here, and this would be add me, and then I would just click on that. So, and just as an FYI, when you add yourself, it signs the user up for training, and then also that user will get an email confirmation as well. Now, if I'm a supervisor, I have the option on the right, as you can see here, to add and remove direct reports to the training, or I could add remove staff below me. I can choose to add or remove all or choose specific people. So here, I clicked on that, and I have a list of my direct staff. So the employees would get emails to notify them that they have been signed up for the training. And you can remove this option so employees would only be able to sign up themselves if this is not something that you'd be interested in. So once the training is completed, the instructor, goes into HR to complete the training and marks if the employees attended the training or not. If the employee did attend the training, any skills or licenses associated to that training would automatically be added to the employee file. And just to reiterate, going back to my presentation here, any upcoming trainings that you're signed up for will appear under My Notifications, and this is on the home page of the portal. So next, I want to talk about benefit enrollment. So let's take a look. So this would be on the Benefits tab. So the benefit enrollment allows employees to come onto the portal during open enrollment or at other points throughout the year and select their coverage for health, dental, or FSAs, for example. So their selections then flow into the benefit enrollment desktop so HR can review and enroll employees. EDI files can be sent to your insurance vendors, and the associated withholdings are automatically added to the employee file. So one thing to keep in mind, implementing benefit enrollment does take 5 to 7 months. So please keep that in mind if you're interested in using this feature. This is kind of like the end result that I'm showing you. And so I also want to give a plug at this point that we are offering a benefit enrollment overview seminar Wednesday, May 16th. And what we're going to do is when we send out an email at the end of this presentation, we'll include the sign-up link in that email. So if you are interested, I strongly recommend signing up for that seminar. Okay, so on this main page here, you have the general information on the benefits. So for here, I have example, I have information on the dates of an open enrollment, the different highlights, additional resources. I can provide links to Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever their insurance provider is. So here is an example of what the actual enrollment form could look like. So it's kind of nice. It's like we added a table here just to kind of show the versatility of the portal and the options that you do have. So most everything that you see here is customizable. So you can customize the text that appears at the top and under each option type, an option type meaning dental or health. When you choose a family plan, let's just say, you can select the dependents. Here we can show how you can add a table or a picture rather to show the different rates. You can also have another section for the FSA. You can define the period or annual amount. And then also I do want to point out, you can also add dependents at this section of the portal as well. So here's where you would add any new dependents that need to be covered. The dependents flow into the employee file and are available on the open enrollment form. So you can let the employees know either through the text at the top, submit message, or email if additional documentation is needed. And this allows you to add multiple dependents at once if necessary. Okay, so what I want to do now is talk about a couple of projects that development is working on, and it's pretty exciting stuff. The first here is the mobile version, so whether you're using a cell phone, tablet, what have you. They're working on a mobile version of the portal to optimize accessing IAS on a small screen. So here is a screenshot of what the home page will look like on the mobile version. So you can see we have the home page buttons in a list and can select them to view more information. We are still working on adding more features to this, so this is a preview of what is to come. Also, development is currently creating a new feature to further enhance the staff portal. These features are geared towards managers to help them accomplish day-to-day tasks by using the portal. These features will be added into the existing staff portal for management staff. So the first feature is the My Staff feature, which lists work, salary, and contact information within a manager's reporting structure. The Work Info tab displays information regarding the employee's position and ID. Each header field can be clicked to resort the information. The Salary tab displays hire and salary-related information for each employee. The Contact Info tab provides information to the user in the event they need to get in touch with their employee. Also on the screen as a manager, you first see the employees that report directly to you. If one of these employees has staff reporting to them, you can use this blue button to see their direct reports. To view the employee file information of one of your reports, you can click on the employees themselves. So that's pretty cool. Then once you click on the employee, it opens the employee file to view, as we see here. We can see some work information, then any LOAs that the employee has, as well as details of the leave. And also the Personal tab shows the employee's phone, email, and address information. So the other tabs are currently in progress, but will show other information from the employee file as well. The My Staff feature is the first out of several features planned for management. So definitely stay tuned for more features to come moving forward in the future. So at this point, I'd like to pause and see if anyone has any questions on anything they've seen so far.
Okay, we did have a couple of questions, and one of them would ask, why does it take 5 to 7 months for open benefit enrollment?
Well, like I mentioned, it is a fairly large topic. It is not just the portal section. There's a lot of building and understanding, and it's a whole new desktop within the HR application themselves. They have their own separate dictionaries, whole separate workflow. So to use this correctly via the best practices, that is why it can take up to 5 to 7 months. And that's just a general time frame. If sites are truly diligent and, work harder to test and confirm everything, it could be a little bit shorter than that. That's just a general time frame going off previous experience.
And also they do the kickoff overview demo in May so that most people could be ready for the benefit enrollment period, like towards the end of the year, like October and November. Also, just to note, like all that stuff that Brian said, in addition, it's like you're actually be updating the employee file with those withholdings that you'll be withholding from the employee's paycheck. So there is a lot of checking that needs to be done. After that first year, the first year generally is the hardest. After you get it set up for the first year, it's pretty easy. When we send out the information following this, the email, and there'll be some links towards the benefit enrollment overview. And within that, there's some information regarding your first year commitment as well as additional years. So once that first year has gone by successfully, the years following that are very easy to do. There's also, like Brian mentioned, the EDI. You have to get the specs from each company that might accept that file. Not all companies do, but if they do accept the EDI, they can be in different formats. So there's all that testing to do, as well as being able to set up correctly your health offering for the different groups that you might have. So it is quite an undertaking, and we do go over that at the overview, just so you can get an idea of how much work is involved, what kind of support you get from us, what can you expect, etc. So another question, Brian, the benefit selection sent to the insurance company, we'll stay with the BE stuff for now.
Sure.
The benefit selections sent to the company. So if you determine that you would like to use the EDI, which is electronic data interchange files, and basically the company that you deal with, so your health insurance, maybe Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever, if you determine that you would like to use that process, then we work with you in order to set up that file correctly according to the specifications provided to you from the company, like the insurance carrier. So you can do that, certainly, and there's also a lot of work that goes along with that. For instance, does this company want to have all the data sent over every time, there's a change? Maybe this company only wants the data that actually is changed to be sent over. And I do we do roll EDI in with benefit enrollment, but they can be used exclusively of each other. You don't have to use EDI if you're using benefit enrollment. So possibly a good plan for you is maybe you do BE this year, benefit enrollment, and then next year you start working on getting the EDI file if it's too much of a commitment for that first time. So just like throwing out all different kind of options right now, but Liz will certainly present it in more detailed explanation, so it would certainly be worth it if you have questions. Also to note, I have a lot to note, I guess. Also is that presentation that we referenced, which is May 16th, I believe.
May 16th.
Yep. You do not have to be ready to join in for your benefit enrollment period this year. If there are some of you out there that are curious and you want to plan ahead, or maybe you're not finished implementing IAS yet, but you want to kind of know what's going to happen, you're all welcome to go to that overview. One more question, I'll give that to you to answer. Someone asked, does the training module allow for you to have slides, videos, and quizzes after, similar to what sites may do for an annual in-service type training?
This is more of a tracking to see who's signed up. So as far as slides, I'm trying to think, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't believe that would be functionality that we have. I guess it would depend on exactly what you're looking for. But like I said, this is more of a training record to show who has attended or completed certain trainings. As far as, animations and slides and things,
We don't interface well with e-learnings that, provided, if that's kind of what you're referring to, we don't interface well with that. We are trying to work on that, but at this point in time, no. However, even with our training, if we are directed as like a prerequisite to a class or after the class to view some kind of training video, you could include the link to that in with the agenda or something like that. So it really depends on what your particular situation is as to how valuable it would be within certain, delimiters. Like for in-house training, that people are actually going to a class, it's perfect. Perhaps other things maybe not so perfect, but as Brian indicated, maybe in those not so perfect situations, we could use a tracking type of thing.
Right.
I think that's all the questions we have for now. You guys are asking a lot of good questions.
Yeah,
that's good.
Great.
Okay, so Brian and I are going to switch, so if you guys could just give us a second here, and we'll be back to you with recruiting. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at recruiting. And one thing, just as a side note, I want to mention, we are truly showing you things from the internet access for staff seat. With the benefit enrollment overview, and what I was going to tell you during this phase also is we are doing the same thing for recruiting in June. So we have these presentations every single month. So if there are people in your organization that didn't get a chance to come, there'll be another one next month. In May, we're having a presentation. I kind of say overview because it's not a training presentation, but it does go into detail. So we're having a presentation for benefit enrollment in May. And in June, we will be doing the same thing for recruiting. And with those two particular presentations, they will bring you across the realm of being in HR as well as being in IAS. So for additional information, that might be something you consider, and we will pass it along when we send out our follow-up email. So with that in mind, what I just said, I did have this slide in here to kind of give you an idea of how the stuff even gets over to IAS. So the first thing that happens is an opening gets created in HR. Of course, there's a lot more to it than create the opening. There's descriptions that can be added, approval process depending upon your needs, etc. The next thing that happens, it will get posted to IAS, but it is based upon approval status and the posting date. You can actually select different posting dates for internal applicants and external applicants according to your hiring protocol. Once someone applies to a job through IAS, then those applications get sent over to HR, and on the HR side, you can compare their qualifications against your minimum requirements. You can trigger job statuses, you can send communications based upon status and interview, and also once someone is hired, they can be moved from an applicant to an employee quite easily. So here we have an example of the job opening screen. Basically, this look and feel of the screen is the same for an internal applicant as well as an external applicant. We're going to look at it from the different categories as far as the entrance point, but this is what it does look like for both of them. You can see we have a number of different search categories. We have job categories. So those of you who may have used recruiting with MIG-IS, we've added, prior to this, there was one of the job category which you linked to that particular opening, but now we have keywords, locations, posting dates, and employment status. So the potential applicant can come in here and select those categories of which they want to search. We have hot jobs that are identified by this star or sun, and yeah, and then the employee can, the applicant can look there. A hot job can be defined as a job, that needs to be filled frequently. It can be defined as a job that you need to fill quickly, and both of those jobs float to the top of the search. Okay, so I am going to, okay, so one of the additional things that we have added is an applicant profile. So here we have this is for external applicants. The applicant URL here gets linked to your hospital website, and then as potential applicant, I come in here and select it. Once I set up my profile, then it stores my information, so I don't have to re-enter it. That's from the applicant side as a benefit. It saves my information, it knows who I am, I can see that the jobs that I've applied for, and just to make note here, this status of under review, that's the status that you define in your parameters as a default one. Once I have a profile created, I can come in here and select any jobs that I want. And once I do select a job to apply for, let's just say we'll come in here. It will give me the job specifics. And this can be as robust as you fill it out to be. So for instance, we have the requirements, we have the job description, and this I'll point out differences as we go along, but the job description can be different from an internal applicant as it is for an external applicant. So you may have different language that you use for an internal applicant, or you may give them more specific information about, the reporting structure or the location or something like that. So once I've reviewed this information and determined that I'm going to apply for that job, I select the apply for button. When I do this, I come up with a job agreement form. So this job agreement form, by accepting it, it means that I accept that agreement. We have different job agreement forms for an internal applicant as well as an external applicant also, as you may have different words that need to be used. You may have a different protocol that needs to be followed for an internal applicant, such as speaking with an internal manager or whatever. If I do not accept this and I reject it, I will not be allowed to apply for that job. So this is not an electronic signature, but is the second best thing, because the system won't let you apply for the job unless you've got to the screen and said, yes, I accept. So coming into this screen here, it's similar to some of the things that we see Brian said. Any of the information that I previously stored in here would default in. You can see I didn't put a ton of stuff, but, and then I can update it and I can put additional information. And I would actually like to have the drum roll, but I can't right now, except Brian is a drummer, so he probably could. If you'll notice down here, along with the W-2s and T-4s online, our next, or maybe even more than that, anticipated enhancement was the ability for applicants to upload their cover letters and resume. As you can tell, I'm in a development ring, and those have been started. So we also anticipate those will be done at least by the end of the third quarter. So that's going to be a huge improvement. One of the things in the interim that we've had customers do is with those submit messages, you can also include, and which I believe that we have here on our submit message. Let's give it a try. Oh, this is kind of a good thing to note. You can also note fields that are required. So in addition to determining some of the fields that are on this application, you can also determine things that are required potentially. I also want to point out, as you see, as if I move through those screens, that submit button stays there. I know Brian kind of pointed it out before, but that's a lot better maneuverability than there was before. Okay, so here in the interim, while we're finishing working on the upload stuff, we were saying, well, you could use your submit message to say who to email your cover letter and resume to. We're not going into this part of it because it's more in the HR functionality, but the ability to upload it does break out and, get rid of a number of steps. However, even if someone did email you information, and that could be a different type of document, maybe, it's a doctor's physical or whatever, you have the ability to attach that information to the applicant file or the employee file. So we do have that ability to document and attach information to the employee file. So that's not something that we also want to overlook, because that's very important. It's one thing to get it electronically, but you also want to have access to it to share that information and document that information. Okay, I'm just going to go back to my slides here so we can make sure that we cover everything. Here's my job descriptions, and here is the difference with an internal application. Of course, because the system already knows who I am. I've already authenticated with pBingo. I am not forced into putting any address information and things like that. So again, you can have different questions, different information based upon the particular type of job. So for instance, you might have particular questions that are asked of clinical staff, and then different questions that are asked of support staff or, front-end staff, things like that. So you can have that set up, and you can also have different ones for internal and external. And for internal applicants, I do not need to fill out all the information, and I access it right from the portal. So for instance, hopefully I didn't get signed out here, but let's give it a try. Okay, so while that's signing me back on, we'll come back over here. Okay, and this is the screens for the external applicant profile. As you can tell, it's basically just a login and a password. We do have forget password functionality. We have the ability to update our emails and addresses and things like that. So we've made it as streamlined and easy as possible. And here's the demographics that I can store for myself. And while that's signing on, I just wanted to tell you a couple of other things, the difference between internal and external. So internal and external can have different post dates. So frequently we've heard that you like to post jobs internally before they're posted externally, and we do have the ability to do that. With the internal application, demographic is not needed because that's already stored with the employee file, and it will recognize that. With the external applicant, if I've created a profile, I can save that information. So it's an ease of use type of thing. And also the other benefit, which I want to touch upon, is that it's good for the applicant, but it's also good for you, because using a profile allows the system to recognize that pBingo submitted this application and submitted that application. So it's almost like what we could call like a filing tool. It knows where all those things should be filed together, so that you'll have access to see, oh, this person is applying for every job under the planet, or they applied for that job and they were a very good candidate, but we couldn't hire them at the time, but they would be great over here. So those are things to consider. Again, you can do different descriptions specifically to internal and external. And we did add, we did have the ability to add, for an internal app, the ability to add additional work experience or education. The job agreement is different, and also you can have different submit and email messages for internal and external. Okay, so we're going to take a stop here for a second. Brian, do we have questions?
No chat.
No chat. Okay. Did anyone have any questions that they wanted to unmute and talk to us about? All righty. Well, I guess we will continue on then. Okay, so this is almost the last area of it. We really appreciate, I know this is a long presentation. We really appreciate your patience with it. We're trying to just get through so much information. So one of the things that have made this really go in the right direction and very beneficial is the ability to have full employee access. So what that allows you to do is once an employee leaves your, is termed or retired, it allows them to have access to their pay information as well as their W-2s or T4s for an extended period of time. You determine what that time frame is. So for instance, maybe you'd want to put it at like 16 months. So if they were termed or retired, January, it would allow them to see that tax season form. Maybe you wanted to go for 3 years. That's fine. Like, you determine what it is. The authentication is changed over to AAA authentication. And basically how it works is once an employee status got changed to term or retire, it gives you the option to create this username and password. If the employee has a home email defined in their file, it will email it to them along with the appropriate information. If they do not have an email defined, it will allow you with the new desktop to create one and send them a physical letter. So this is an example here of a former employee landing page. So as you can see, there's only 2 buttons. There is a profile button and a payroll button. Those are the information that's restricted to for former employees. Obviously, there wouldn't be, if it was recruiting, they would use the external applicant and et cetera. There wouldn't be trainings and things. I just want to put out there that additional resources as well as general announcements can be specific just for former employees, as you'd probably want to push different information to this group of people than you were to an active employee. So this is the profile here. There's not a lot of information compared to regular that can be updated, but it does have some information where they can update their contact information, their consent, things like that. Here's the profile for the user data, and as you can see here, they can update their password. In fact, that password that they're sent with initially is a temporary password, and you determine the length of time before they have to update it. And here's actually the former employee desktop. So as you can see here, it shows us the employee number, the name, the status, and when that status came out. It also shows you if a user ID was created and the letter was printed. So this right here will give you a lot of information. It's kind of like where we're maneuvering to create an ID, to send out a letter, to reset the password, things like that. Also, what we're adding here, because if you remember, I indicated that once an employee goes to termed or retired, that will generate an email to their home email. However, if they don't have a home email, a letter does need to be printed. But let's say that Brian retired and he did not have a home email, so he called me up to ask me a question. Instead of going in and making a big change, I can just select this home email button down here and allow me to update this field here. So basically, he's all set going forward from there. One thing that is really nice about this too is, let's say that you went live on this, May 1st or whatever. This will not be limited to employees that term or retire from that point forward. You can retroactively go back to the beginning of the year if that's something that you would choose to do. Okay, we're just going to talk about 2 more things, what's coming up, and also how do you guys join in on this IAS fund. So as Brian mentioned, we have the mobile version that's coming very soon. These are all within a short time period, the upcoming ones. With the mobile version, we have the management portal. We also have the ability to upload documents, cover letters, and resumes. And soon we will be setting up required fields on the employee profile and able to edit right in the web personnel and payroll screen. So for instance, if Brian sends a request to change his address, and let's say that I like to have it road spelled out and he puts RG, it will allow me to correct it right there. The T4s online for our Canadian friends, those will be done by the end of the year. And as also, as Brian indicated, the compensation statement is being reworked also. Okay, so how can you get started? One of the things, and this information will also be included in the email, but one of the things that's required is that you complete this survey. It's basically just asking for your contact information, what size hospital you are, if you currently use MIG IAS. And the reason we ask for that is just to keep it a concerted effort to keep it organized and make sure that we have the correct information. So that is required just to fill out that quick form. Once that quick form is received by me, I'm Patty Bingle, by the way. You can email me at pbingle@medtech.com if you have any questions. Once that survey is received, basically what happens is I send you back a confirmation email. I include your salesperson, and I give you the information regarding the hardware, etc. And then at that point, you can discuss with sales any implementation fees, things like that. And then a hardware eval will be provided for you. Once that hardware is in place, we can start the implementation. So the hardware requirements, just on, on a general level here, if you're currently using Patient Portal, or PHM is the module name, then you would only need an additional web server, because we share the 2.0 universe with the Patient Portal, so that was the only additional thing. If you don't have PHM in place, there are additional servers that are required, and that's where the hardware eval comes in, because it will look at everything and make sure that you have the required servers. They are standard MedTech specs, the standard ones, and I've also included a link to our technical information, which gives you some things to consider, whether this will be an external site, what ports, etc. Okay, thankfully, we have talked your ears off for the last almost 2 hours. We really appreciate you joining us. Do we have any more questions, Brian?
We do have, excuse me, one chat, and it's a good question. Can job openings we post in IAS be sent out to external sites such as career.com? And cleanly, not really is the best answer I can give you, because it is housed under our external link. All our openings are housed under that umbrella. So cleanly to pick off certain jobs, positions to be put under those external websites such as career.com, I don't really think is, and Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, feasible at this point.
I agree. As far as I know, that's correct.
Yeah.
Any other chats?
No.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We will follow up with an email. If anyone has any questions and they would like to stay on the line, Brian and I will stay on for a little bit in case anyone wants to discuss their particular situation or their particular questions. We'll be happy to do that. But otherwise, just look for an email from us with all these links, etc., and registration for benefit enrollment and recruiting. And any questions, certainly reach out to us. But thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you.